Hello, this is the train body part 2. We need to finish this up by drilling holes into the front of the train for the cow catcher. So we'll put holes here on this front face. We're going to learn how to make a flat plane on this curved surface here so that we can drill a hole in the top. And then we'll also drill holes in both sides for the wheel axles. And then the last part we will need, and this you can't see this from the diagram, but we need a hole back here for the hitch that's going to go there so we can connect cars to the train in theory. So we're going to learn how to use the hole tool among some other things. And if you're looking at your diagram of the train body, which hopefully you have that available, there's a couple of different symbols. First of all, remember the O with the slash through it, that's diameter. So that tells us the diameter of the hole. But you also have this, it looks like a down arrow. And the down arrow represents the depth of the hole. When you drill a hole, you can control how deep the hole goes. And that's what we're looking for with depth. For the axle holes, you're going to also see something that says UNC. And we'll talk more about that later, but that's basically just how in machine parts you have different kinds of screws that you can put in. So it's a way of establishing exactly what drill bit to use and exactly what types of bolts will go in those holes. So 1/4 inch 20 UNC is a very standard part, and so we'll learn how to find that in the drilled holes menu. Let's get started with just the front here. Let's go ahead and put the holes for the cow catcher. So I'm going to right click on the front and then click New Sketch. And there's the front of the part. So we are going to be placing, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to point. Click on point, and I'm going to be placing a hole here somewhere, and then a hole somewhere here, and then a hole somewhere here. So those are my 3 holes that I'm going to put in. I'm now going to dimension those individual marks based on the measurements that we have on the drawing sheet, or on the diagram rather. So the first thing I want to do is figure out how far from the bottom this hole should be. This hole should be a certain distance from the bottom. So if we look at the diagram, it looks like the 2 bottom holes, these 2 here, are 0.125. So I'm going to dimension this point to the bottom as 0.125. It's really close. This one as well from the bottom, 0.125. And then the top hole is another 1/2 inch above that. So it's going to be 0.625. Now we've corrected those for the y-axis. We need to now place them horizontally. And it looks like we have a dimension of 0.375 from the left. So this left side is 0.375 from the left edge, which means it's going to be 0.375 from the right edge. Now, the diagram that you have says measure everything from the left. So I can click left side, and I can click the far right dot, and I basically know that it should be a 0.375 from the far edge, or we can just type in 1.625. And if we added 1.625 to 0.375, you get 2 inches, which is the total width. So that's another way to do it, all using the same beginning point, as opposed to dimensioning from the left and then dimensioning from the right. The top hole should be centered. So that just means it's going to be 1 inch. 1 inch, exactly, from either left or right. So now those placements are done. We have them in the right place. So we're going to finish sketch. So I still have my marks. These are called center marks when we make holes. The next thing we want to do is use the hole tool. Now I could have, in theory, drawn a circle and then extrude cut the circle. But that's not really what we want to go for here, because we want the information about that hole to show up when we do the drawing sheet, such as depth. If you just extrude cut a circle to make a hole, you wouldn't get the information for depth on your drawing sheet. Okay, now that I have my marks created on the front, I'm now going to drill holes. So I go to the hole tool. Now, a couple things about holes. There's a lot of different types and sizes. Some of them have 2 different diameters because the top is wider than the bottom. So there's a lot of options. First thing you want to do is make sure you're on presets, and you want to do no preset. So this should be straight, a straight cylinder. Then we want to make sure that we've selected all 3 points, and it has. It is a simple hole. And then we have termination. So we're going to change the termination. Termination tells you how deep the hole should be. According to my diagram, the hole depth is 0.125. So it's a really shallow hole. You can see how shallow that is. It doesn't matter if it's flat. Let's just change it to flat, and that'll get rid of that number. Now, what's my diameter? What's the diameter of the hole? It's the symbol with the circle with the slash through it, and you see that it's 0.125 as well. So these are tiny holes. Oh, I gotta delete the previous number. There we go. So we have 3 holes. They're all the same size. They're all going back in the right direction. And so that looks like that's finished. Click OK. And so now we have 3 holes drilled into the front of the train. All right, we're going to do the same thing with the side. New sketch. All right, and so we want to place marks. I'm going to place a mark here. I'm going to place a mark here. Now we want to use the dimensions on the diagram to find out where those marks are located. So along the x-axis, this mark should be 1 inch from the rear of the train. And this mark should be 4.5 inches from the rear of the train. Height-wise, both of them should be 0.5 from the bottom of the train. So those locations are good. Finish sketch. Now I'm going to drill holes. Go to hole tool again. This time the hole says 1/4 inch -20 UNC. So in order to get that kind of hole, we want to go, instead of a simple hole, we want to go to tapped. Now tapped brings up a whole another menu here that we did not have before. So we go to tap. Now understand, when we say tapped, if you went to Lowe's, tap just means it's threaded. So this already has threads inside the hole. So it is a unified screw. Let's see. Right now, you see the number 5 right there. That means it's metric. So I know it's not metric. So what I want to do is I want to open this up, and it says 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and select 1/4 inch. And sure enough, the designation is 1/4 inch -20 UNC. That matches the information on my diagram. So this is the hole that I want. The depth of this hole, so now I can move down here to the bottom. The depth of the hole is 0.875. So I'm going to change my depth to 0.875. And then I can also change how deep the threads go. Do the threads go all the way into the hole? I'm going to assume that they do. Doesn't really say. So I'm going to do the thread depth of 0.875 as well. So I had some little warning symbols because I had deleted the I for inches. Now, it should be 0.875 in both boxes. And then I've selected both holes. We're good there. Click OK. Now, if we zoom in, you can see inside the hole. And this is how Inventor illustrates that it's threaded as opposed to regular tapped. See, there's no little swirl spirals in here, but we do have the little spiral design here. Okay, so that's one side. Let's flip to the other side and do them on the other side. Now I'm going to show you a quick, easy way to do this. So once we put a sketch on the other side, instead of going through and redimensioning all the hole marks, we're going to do project geometry and hover over where I think the hole is. So once I find the green, click once and click again. And now we've projected the locations of the holes. We know that those are in exactly the right spots. So I can finish sketch. And now I can drill the holes. We're going to use the same method. It's already selected for us because it's what we did last time. So what it says here in red, select positions. So I'm going to select this first one. And then I'm going to select the second one. So now I have the two holes selected. Everything else is the same from previous. Click OK. And so now we have axle holes drilled on either side of the train. All right, next step. We need to drill a hole in the back. Whoops. So to find the dimensions for the hole in the back here, we're going to open up. So we have the diameter and the depth of 0.5. So a diameter of 0.25 and a depth of 0.5. And it should be 0.375 from the bottom. Let's try and remember those. So I'm going to place a mark. Well, first of all, I'm going to put a sketch, new sketch. Place a point somewhere. Now notice what it's done. It tried to make me select something from the other side. So I'm going to make sure I avoid those lines that have popped up. So I'm just going to click it here. I'm going to avoid those lines. So now I'm going to dimension from the bottom. It was 0.375. I'm also going to dimension from either left or right. It's got to be centered, so it doesn't matter which one you choose as long as you put 1 inch. And then we'll finish the sketch. Let's get an isometric view so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to drill a hole. Now this time the hole's not threaded, so what I need to do is I need to go up here and select simple. And this should turn back to a straight hole where all we have is the depth, which I'm going to change my depth to 0.5. And then we have a diameter, which I'm going to change to 0.25. Let me double check that. A diameter of 0.25 and a depth of 0.5. I think that's what I said. Yep. And then click OK. So now we've put a hole there in the back. The last thing is the most difficult part of all this. We're going to need to put a flat surface. You cannot draw a sketch onto a curved surface. So what we're going to need to do is create an imaginary plane that is flat on top. So the way we do that is we go to planes and drop that menu down. And let's get an offset plane. Offset just means you start at point A and you move it parallel to another area. So offset plane, I'm going to select this. That's what I want, this flat. I want this flat spot here. So I'm going to offset it like this, just dragging the arrow. Actually, let's choose the bottom. That way we've got a nice wide surface. So I don't want the side, I don't want that, I want the bottom. There, that's what I want. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to drag it upward until we can see it's still cutting through the train here. So I'm going to drag it upward. There we go. Now, if we turn it to the side, you might be able to see the plane is resting right on the top surface. That's what I want. So now that I've got this plane, I'm going to click OK. I can put a sketch on this plane. So I'm going to right click on the edge of the plane, right click, new sketch. And now I'm just zooming around a little bit so I can make sure I get sorry about that. This is where we're going to put it. Right here. So if I angle it, you can see I'm putting it on the front of the train, the smokestack, the hole for the smokestack. All right, now we need to look back and see the hole from the smokestack should be 0.875 away from the front of the train. So I'm going to put a point here. And the distance from the front of the train should be 0.875. Now, the smokestack should be centered. So from the outside edge of the train should be 1. And now it's centered and it's the right distance from the front of the train. So I can finish that sketch. I've got my location plotted. Now I want to drill a hole. So take your hole tool. It's already selected it for you. All we have to now do is change the dimensions. And it is a diameter of 0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and change my diameter to 0.5. And then a depth of 0.25. So it should be wide and fairly shallow. And click OK. Now, we don't want to go through the entire rest of this project and still have this plane visible. So I'm going to right click on the edge, get the circle menu up, and then where it says visibility, just uncheck that. So now we have the train body and all the holes drilled. The final step is to go through and put fillets on all of these sharp edges. Remember, this is a kid's toy. And so you want to round off any of these sharp edges so that the child that's playing with it wouldn't get splinters. Not to mention, it just makes it look better. So our fillets, according to our diagram, there are no fillets on the diagram. Okay. So we're going to do a fillet of 0.125, I believe. Let's try that. So we're going to take a fillet. It starts off as 0.125. I think we're going to keep that. Let's see. We're just going to click all of these sharp edges like this. Do not change the bottom. Leave the bottom alone. And so I'm just going to follow this around. Without doing the bottom. I'm also going to fill in this, and what you'll see is right now, it still kind of looks like there's a cylinder just put on top of a block. But if we fill this part in, it really kind of, it's like taking wood putty and filling it in there, filling the gap in. It makes it seem permanent. Do the same thing on this side. Do that there. I just want to make sure it's done all the way around. Now, of course, you could click a couple of these and then, you know what, let's do that. Click apply. And that way I can click some more, because basically if I had messed up then I would have to undo or redo all of those I just did. But because I did those, I've already saved those. I don't have to go back and undo them if I mess up later. Once again, we're not doing the bottom of it. All right. That should be it. The next thing we'll do is the drawing sheet, and that will be coming up soon.